Allison Reed, 35, had always been the kind of woman people quietly admired but never fully understood. She lived in Reno, Nevada, and worked as a librarian. Her days were filled with the soft rustle of turning pages, the faint scent of ink and dust, and the warmth she extended to every child or stranger who walked through the library doors. She carried a gentle smile and a kind heart, though over the years, the spark in her spirit had begun to fade. For 12 years, she had been married to Samuel Hayes, a charismatic, ambitious businessman in the tourism industry. At first, he had seemed perfect, attentive, devoted, full of laughter and little surprises. But charm, Allison had learned, could wear thin. The hugs became routine, the kisses cold, and the silence between them grew heavier than any argument. Allison, who never complained, felt herself disappearing, saying goodbye to her dreams, her goals, and her chance to grow, sacrificed for a love that had turned into a broken mirror. Still, she clung to hope, believing maybe the man she had once loved might reappear. That hope shattered one Wednesday night. Allison was packing a small suitcase for a trip to Sparks, Nevada, where her mother, Caroline Reed, was recovering from surgery. Samuel, as usual, claimed he couldn't come because of an urgent meeting in Las Vegas. That evening, he returned home carrying a box wrapped in gold paper with a red bow. "It's for your mom," he said smoothly, his smile practiced. "A gift from me with love." Allison's chest tightened. She thanked him, touched on the surface, but his eyes betrayed something false, as if he were acting in a play he no longer believed in. She placed the gift in her suitcase and went to shower. When she returned, towel wrapped around her hair and robe tied snugly, she heard him speaking in the hallway, low, deliberate, calculated. She crept toward the study, where the door was slightly ajar. "Yes, I already put it in her suitcase," Samuel whispered into his phone. "Passports are there, just like you said. Mark's ready at the airport. Once the complaint is filed, she won't even see it coming. By the time she realizes, she'll be handcuffed." Blood ran cold. Passports. Complaint. Handcuffed. Then came the final blow, his quiet chuckle. "I swear, after this, nothing will stand between us, Claire. Soon we'll be free." The name cut through her like a knife. Claire. Her legs buckled, stomach twisted, eyes burning with tears she refused to shed. Hands shaking, she ripped into the gift box. Inside was a leather pouch. When she unzipped it, she found 2 passports with her name. But the photos were altered. The stamps showed countries she had never visited, the details twisted into a story that wasn't hers. It was a setup. Samuel was trying to destroy her, perhaps to dodge a messy divorce, to silence her forever, or just to walk away with his lover. Whatever his motive, he wanted her gone. But Allison wasn't as fragile as he thought. She didn't cry, not yet. She closed the pouch, took a deep, steadying breath, and reached for her phone. There was only one person she could call. "Patricia," she whispered when her best friend picked up. "It's urgent. My husband's trying to ruin me." Patricia Morgan, Allison's college roommate and now a federal agent in Las Vegas, was sharp, steady, and loyal to the bone. The next morning, Allison laid everything out. The forged passports, the overheard conversation, the names. Patricia's eyes hardened. She promised that they would turn the entire scheme back on Samuel. And so the counterattack began. Allison returned home before Samuel woke. She carefully emptied the leather pouch, slipping the forged passports into his suitcase, the one he would take on his business trip. She placed the wrapped gift back in her luggage so he would suspect nothing. Then she lay down beside him, face calm. When he kissed her forehead before leaving, confident he was in control, Allison only smiled faintly, knowing it would be the last false kiss she'd accept. By noon, he was gone, carrying the very evidence meant to destroy her. Alone on the couch, Allison finally let the tears come. Tears of betrayal, rage, and grief. She wasn't a criminal, but she wasn't naive either. She wouldn't allow a man to trade her life for his lies. She called Patricia again. "He's gone," she said, voice breaking. "Perfect," Patricia replied, firm. "Now it's our turn." Patricia's team moved quickly. Digital copies of the forged documents, recordings of Samuel's conversations with Mark, even a snippet Allison had found on his phone, all secured. The plan: catch Samuel red-handed with the evidence, ensuring he faced charges not just for fraud, but for serious federal offenses. Meanwhile, Samuel headed to Las Vegas, where Claire waited at a luxury hotel. She was younger, striking, and skilled at feeding his ego. He believed he was finally free, sipping champagne, talking about their future travels. But what he didn't know was that every toast, laugh, and whispered promise was being recorded. The trap was set. On Sunday afternoon, as Samuel and Claire drove back in a rented SUV, they were stopped at a checkpoint outside Lake Tahoe. Officers asked for documents and searched the trunk. Inside Samuel's suitcase, they found the forged passports. "Can you explain this?" an officer asked evenly. Samuel froze. Claire panicked. "That's not mine. I don't know how it got there." But the officers had orders. Samuel was handcuffed on the spot. Claire screamed and tried to reach him but was restrained. "And my wife?" Samuel demanded. "What about Allison?" One officer looked at him coldly. "We don't know anything about your wife. What we do know is you're in serious trouble." For the first time, Samuel realized the trap had snapped shut. Claire's protests were useless. He was taken straight to the federal building in Las Vegas for questioning. When he tried to reach Mark, his supposed partner, Mark had vanished the moment things began to unravel. Samuel was alone, exposed, and abandoned. Miles away, Allison followed the news online. The headline made her heart race. "Businessman arrested with forged documents on Lake Tahoe Highway." She leaned back on her mother's terrace in Sparks, coffee in hand. Patricia sat beside her, calm and proud. Caroline, unaware of the full story, asked gently, "Allison, why are you smiling?" "Because sometimes," Allison said softly, "justice wears the face of a woman." Inside the federal building, Samuel Hayes paced like a caged lion. His carefully styled hair was now greasy and tangled, his shirt soaked with sweat, not from heat, but from the pressure closing in on him. Hours dragged on with no phone calls, no visitors, and no allies. The forged passports were enough to bury him, but the real weight came from the charge of international identity trafficking, a federal offense that could land him in prison for up to 15 years. With every tick of the clock, Samuel felt the walls closing tighter. For the first time, he understood what it truly meant to be powerless. In a separate cell, Claire crumbled. The woman who had once seemed so bold and alluring now sat pale and trembling, mascara streaked down her cheeks. She hadn't lasted 5 minutes in her first interrogation before breaking. Fear hollowed her out, and in her desperate bid to save herself, she dragged everyone down with her. Between sobs, she named Mark, confessed Samuel's role, and even revealed the plan to frame Allison. "I didn't know everything," she cried, voice cracking. "I thought it was just immigration paperwork. I didn't know it would ruin her." No one in the room believed her. Every word was recorded. Every confession dug her hole deeper. Miles away, Allison Reed followed the updates with calm detachment. For the first time in years, she felt something she had almost forgotten: freedom. She was no longer chained to a toxic marriage or the lies Samuel had spun around her. She was in control now. Yet one thing remained unfinished. She wanted to look Samuel in the eye, to show him he had lost, and that it was because of her. At her mother Caroline's home in Sparks, Allison reread Samuel's old text messages. Once, those words had made her heart skip. Now they read like bait in a trap, each promise dripping with deceit. Her heart, once tender, had hardened. She didn't just want justice. She wanted Samuel to understand exactly who had pulled the rug out from under him. With Patricia Morgan's help and clearance from the federal building, Allison arranged a visit. On Tuesday morning, she drove south, documents in order, resolve unwavering. She wore no makeup, tied her hair back, and dressed simply. Each step carried purpose as she entered the sterile building. Samuel, locked in his cell, was told he had an unexpected visitor. He assumed it was Mark, maybe a lawyer, or some distant ally willing to stick his neck out. When the door opened and he saw Allison standing there, his face drained of color. She sat, lifted the phone calmly, and waited. Slowly, almost in disbelief, Samuel picked up the receiver. "Allison," he said, voice shaking. "You're okay? How did you..." What are you doing here? Her lips curved into a sharp, controlled smile. Samuel, I thought you deserved to hear it from me. I know everything, the passport's marked, Claire. Every piece of your filthy plan to destroy me. And you know the best part? You put the evidence in my hands yourself. His eyes widened. Wait, it was you? You planted those passports in my suitcase. Yes, she said, steady and calm. But don't twist this. You're the one who ordered them, who conspired, who plotted every detail. I just made sure justice found what it needed. You dug your own grave, Samuel. I just pushed you in. Sweat beaded at his temples. He gripped the phone so tightly his knuckles turned white. You'll regret this. I'll get out, you'll see. I still have contacts. I can turn this around. Allison let out a short, sharp laugh. Contacts? They're gone. Mark vanished. Claire betrayed you. And now you're alone, completely alone. Fury consumed him. He slammed the phone down, pounding his fists against the glass, shouting curses until his voice broke. Guards rushed in, restraining him as he thrashed. Allison stood without flinching, her dignity intact. Her final words, calm and resolute, cut through the chaos. This isn't revenge, Samuel. This is justice. She walked away without a backward glance. Outside, Patricia waited. They embraced tightly, a hug that spoke of battles fought and won. Allison didn't shed a single tear. Instead, she felt lighter, as though years of chains had fallen away. And now, what's next? Patricia asked softly. Allison smiled faintly. Now, I'm going to live. In the days that followed, Samuel's world collapsed completely. The man who had once thrived on charm and manipulation was stripped of everything. His freedom, his reputation, even the story he had written about himself. The press devoured the scandal. A respected businessman involved in document forgery, an attempt to frame his wife, a lover who cracked under interrogation, and an accomplice on the run. Mark was already in the crosshairs of federal agents. 2 days after Samuel's arrest, he fled across state lines, terrified. But Allison and Patricia turned over every scrap of evidence: bank records, addresses, license plates, old message threads. An arrest warrant went out, crossing jurisdictions. Claire, unlike Samuel, chose to cooperate. Through tears, she told her story. She had met Samuel at a conference in Truckee, California. At first, it had been harmless flirtation, but Samuel wove his web, convincing her his marriage was over, that Allison was unstable and controlling, that he was the victim. Slowly, he persuaded her Allison had to disappear. He promised Claire safety, a future. Behind bars, that fantasy shattered. Her confession revealed the full horror. Samuel's plan was to have Allison arrested, transfer properties into Claire's name, and flee abroad. Worse still, he had fabricated criminal records in Allison's name, linking her to an international forgery ring. The case escalated to an international level. When Allison learned this, her body went cold. Samuel hadn't just wanted to leave her, he had wanted to erase her entirely. Yet that knowledge only strengthened her conviction. She had done the right thing. She had saved herself. She marked the turning point symbolically. She returned to the house she had once shared with Samuel. Room by room, she gathered her belongings. What was hers, she kept. What no longer mattered, she donated. The rest she sold. With the money, she rented a modest downtown apartment, cozy and sunlit, filling it only with things that made her feel alive. She returned to the library but added something new: night classes in psychology, rekindling the dreams she had buried for Samuel's sake. Patricia never left her side. One evening after class, they sat in a coffee shop, steam rising from their mugs. Patricia studied her friend with admiration. Do you realize you've become a heroine? Not many people could face what you did, she said. Allison shook her head gently. I never wanted to be a heroine, Patricia. I just didn't want to be a victim. The trial moved swiftly. With overwhelming evidence, Samuel was sentenced to 17 years in prison for document forgery, attempted fraud, and framing another person. Claire, having cooperated, received a reduced sentence of 4 years, eligible for parole after 2. Mark was captured 4 months later at the Arizona-New Mexico border, attempting to enter Texas with fake documents, the same crime Samuel had built his empire on. He was extradited to Nevada and sentenced to 9 years. When it was over, Allison felt something deeper than relief. She had not only survived, she had reclaimed her life. Her story wasn't just about justice. It was about rebirth. Months passed, and by the time Allison Reed turned 36, she had quietly become a symbol of resilience. She never sought recognition, yet her story carried its own weight, spreading in whispers through Reno and beyond. People spoke of how she had endured betrayal from someone she had once trusted completely, and how she had faced that devastation not with anger, but with intelligence and quiet strength. Articles highlighted her case, professors invited her to guest lectures at universities, and her name surfaced in conversations about perseverance. Still, Allison shied away from the spotlight. She preferred anonymity. Her days followed a simple, steady rhythm. She worked at the public library, where the familiar scent of old books and the soft rustle of turning pages brought her comfort. At night, she studied for her archival science certification, pouring herself into work that grounded her. Her apartment in Sparks was modest but bright, filled with trailing plants, stacks of books, and sunlight streaming through wide windows. Each morning, she stepped onto her small terrace with a steaming cup of coffee, gazing at the Sierra Nevada mountains, learning, day by day, how to savor her own company without apology. Samuel Hayes, by contrast, had been reduced to a fading memory. Locked in a medium-security prison outside Reno, his days were consumed by endless, fruitless appeals. Each attempt to overturn his sentence only unearthed more of his corruption, more evidence of his crimes. Within the narrow gray walls of his cell, Samuel wrestled with the bitter loss of freedom, respect, and above all, power. He clung to the illusion that Allison had orchestrated his downfall, yet deep down, he knew the truth. He had destroyed himself long before she exposed him. Claire, once vain and attention-seeking, served her sentence in a semi-open facility, shuttling between reintegration programs and counseling sessions. She feared the world beyond the prison gates. The stares that had once fueled her pride now cut like knives. With psychologists, she spoke of regret, but the words rang hollow. Beneath her carefully constructed expressions, she still grappled with the reality of her complicity, still unable to fully face the cruelty she had helped perpetuate. As for Mark, he vanished from public attention altogether. After a few months, he was transferred to a remote prison in the Nevada desert. Headlines moved on. News crews stopped caring. He became just another forgotten number in the system. But the real story wasn't about those trapped behind bars. It was alive in Allison's newfound path. Nearly a year after Samuel's conviction, Allison found an envelope in her mailbox. Plain, unmarked, no return address. When she saw the handwriting, her breath caught. It was his. She hesitated, then carefully opened it. Allison, if you're reading this, it means my appeal has failed. I don't expect forgiveness, nor do I expect you to answer. But I need to say this, you won. I've spent months trying to pinpoint the moment I truly lost. Maybe it was long before the scheme. Maybe it was the moment I began to see you not as my partner, but as an obstacle. You were stronger than I ever imagined. Even now, I can't shake the shame. If you can, go on with your life in peace. Samuel. Allison read the letter slowly, hands steady, eyes calm. When she finished, she folded it neatly and tucked it between the pages of an old F. Scott Fitzgerald novel on her bookshelf. She felt no hatred, no pity. Instead, a deep, steady peace settled over her, the kind that comes only after a storm has spent its last breath. That night, she lay in bed and, for the first time in years, drifted into deep, uninterrupted sleep. The following week, Patricia Morgan called with an invitation, a women's retreat in Sedona, Arizona, designed for those who had endured emotional trauma. The timing felt right, and Allison agreed. When she arrived, the desert air was warm, and the red rocks rose like ancient guardians around her. She was greeted by women who hugged her without hesitation, who smiled as if they had known her forever. They shared stories that mirrored her own: betrayal, manipulation, emotional scars that lingered like shadows. Yet in every voice, she heard determination. These were women ready to rebuild. Over the following days, Allison discovered something new. Her story, once so heavy, could be transformed into light for others. Her pain became strength, not just for herself, but for the women sitting beside her in circle after circle, listening, nodding with tears in their eyes. She realized her journey was not isolated. It echoed the struggles of countless others. Women who had been silenced, dismissed, or deceived, yet who eventually discovered the same truth. Honesty, no matter how devastating, was the most powerful weapon they possessed. Allison had never sought revenge. What she found instead was freedom. And that, she understood, was her greatest victory. You just heard this one from Stories by Sue. If it resonated, don't forget to like and subscribe. What are your thoughts? Share them in the comments. I'd love to hear. Thanks for watching.